Hey, welcome to my day 26 reflection on walking the Camino. This is from Cacabelos to Vega de Valcarce. The previous day, I'd done a shorter walk, as I mentioned, to sort of preserve my ankle. And today, I was going to be taking a bit of a longer walk, um, and so just getting launched. I'm going to tell you about a powerful encounter I had with a woman that I ended up walking a good portion of the day with. And a couple of themes that are going to be prominent in this reflection are the damaging impacts of pornography and healing. That the Lord desires healing for you, for your relationships, for your life, and how we ought not to miss out on the healing that the Lord has for us. So, one of the areas of spiritual growth that happened for me on the Camino was the the meaning of the moment, the what's at stake in a moment, and how God, in His providential design, provides these. I use the phrase divine appointments. These moments where He brings together two people in a way that standing apart is frankly a bit extraordinary. Like how like the idea of a near miss versus the connection happened. And I saw this unfold so many times. And I'm going to promise you in a later reflection, I'm going to share with you how this is connected to Jesus being the way. I've already shared with you the idea that the road to Emmaus, Jesus comes and meets us on the way, but it's something even more profound than that, that Jesus is the way. Well, this ended up happening because, as I mentioned to you, one of the things that I'll typically do when I'm praying is I say, Lord, I give you my day. It's at your disposal. And I know that my custom that I just talked about in the last reflection is to spend the first 2.5 or 3 hours in prayer for my family. And then from there, I open myself to meeting with someone. Like, Lord, if you have somebody for me to meet with and walk with, bring it about, Lord. I say yes. I'm yes in advance. And so this particular day, I got up early. It was dark out, as in other days. Went downstairs, got a cup of coffee, and uh, actually had my own breakfast, my own little healthy breakfast. I had an avocado and a tomato and a cup of coffee. So I'm getting rid of, again, I don't want to have potatoes in my eggs, the Spanish tortilla. I'm going to strip that out as much as possible and just end up with healthier eating. Okay, so finish that up and timing of it all. I walk out the front door of the hostel and um, and literally as I take a step off the hostel into the street where the Camino continues the path, a woman walks and ends up walking like literally next to me. In those same seconds that I come off, she comes next to me. And so I had taken to the habit of, if that happens to me, I'll just say something to them. I'll say Buen Camino. And the way they say Buen Camino back, I can tell almost assuredly if they are primary English speakers or Americans because of the accent with which they say back Buen Camino. Have a good walk, have a good way. And uh, and so she said Buen Camino back. I'm like, okay, she's an English speaker. And so I just will throw out one more sentence just to see if there's any inclination to have a conversation and get launched together into that day. And so I said something like, it's great to get started early. And she said something back, and the tone of her voice was a little bit mixed. Like there was a little bit of, okay, leave me alone, it's early. And then there was a little bit of, I might have an openness to walk with you and talk with you for a little bit. And so I said something else. I don't remember what it was. I think I might have even said something like, "Oh, do you want to, walk together for a little bit?" And she said, "Yeah." And so we just started walking. And so within, say, a half an hour, it got lighter. So we probably left, I don't know, 7:45, something like that. I don't know where she had started, but this is where I had started. And so we started to chat. And so easy, comfortable chat at the beginning. Where are you from? Well, come to find out, a couple of things just kind of jumped out. The first was that she was from Western Washington, and that's where I had spent 20 years of my life with my wife, and had our children and had raised our children until we had moved to Spokane about 5 years ago. And so it's like, whoa, wait a minute. And then it comes out that uh, she's in real estate. I'm like, what? Okay, there we go. Another connecting point. So we start having that kind of conversation. So now there's like all these common things that we have uh, in together, and so that kind of builds a basis for an ongoing conversation. And so as we're walking along, and it's sort of a beautiful area, and we're continuing on, and we then uh, we then come to the place where you eventually get to, which was, why are you doing this? Why are you walking the Camino? And I love asking those deeper, like, why questions. And really the question is like, what's at stake? Like, what's at stake for you in this Camino? Like, why are you here? And she began to share a bit of her personal situation, that she's now single again, having been separated and divorced, or finalizing a divorce with her husband, and is at a stage in her life where she's headed towards retirement. And so this is part of sort of the adventure of the next stage of her life, trying to get a sense of, in a peaceful way, not in like a stressful way, like, well, what's next for me in this adventure called life? So that was sort of her story, and I didn't probe and push into like those like more private matters, just acknowledged it. And then she asked me, and so I gave the the entry point that was less specifically religious at the start, and that was that 10x life. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you've obviously jumped into the middle of these reflections. You have to go all the way back to the first one on, why am I walking the Camino? And so as I shared about this 10x life that I am installing into my life, or transforming into my reality, it was, again, fascinating. So many of the people that have heard me share about this just was so like taken with it, because I think in part it had resonance. It resonated with their circumstances for being on the Camino. It just gave them different language for it. And so as part of that sharing on the 10x life, what am I talking about? Well, I start talking all about this shift into doing more church work, more ministry work. And so as that part began to unfold, and I began to share more about the kind of work that I had done and am attempting to recover and go deeper into in my life, come to find out, she's Catholic. Come to find out, she was involved in a parish that I had done a tremendous amount of church work at. And then all of a sudden there's wait a minute, you're Tom Curran? And there was another one of these like recognition moments that, oh, I'm talking to Tom Curran, the guy from the church stuff. And so that allowed for a shift. That allowed for a um, a way of relating to um, me that was based more now in a sense of, okay, I can trust him more deeply, because I know of his reputation, the years that he's done this stuff. And so just this idea of I can trust you now allowed us to go to a much deeper level in the conversation. So she began to talk more about her own Catholic life of faith and how it was being stirred back into flame through coming on the Camino, and talked a bit about some meaningful Catholic moments that she had had on the Camino. And I was very affirming of those things and encouraging of those things. And then I said to her, "Hey, look, we have this wonderful opportunity to spend some time together." And one of the things that then came out of it was, "Hey, why don't?" I said, "Is there anything that you'd want to talk about? Like, okay, now that you know, or you're kind of like reminded of, who I am, my background, and this opportunity that we have of walking together. Um, is there anything that you'd want to talk about?" Now, as this is going on, we're also walking this path, and there's a very interesting thing that happens on this particular stage. And the stage is that you can stay on the traditional Camino path, which is going to basically be run right along the valley, along the highway through these two mountain range areas. But there's and basically your walk that day would be along a busy highway on the other side of a guardrail, and it would go on for 10 miles. The alternative is to climb up this steep mountain, walk along essentially pretty close to the top of the ridge, and then go up and down a couple of times, and then make your way back down this steep descent on the other side. And she said, "I want to do that. I want to take the alternative path. I want to take the road less traveled. I want to take the harder road. And it's more challenging, and I'm up for it." And she had shared with me some of the things she'd done in her past. One of the questions I love asking people is, name 3 things that you're really proud of. And so she had a chance to share with me a couple of like big things that she had done in her life that were really impressive. And so I was like, okay, let's go. So we started walking up this really steep, extensive trail. And it was, as we're starting this conversation, what do you want to talk about? And I have to tell you, that road less traveled, right, it was incredible. We had, honestly, I think I had probably the second most beautiful hiking day in terms of the views, the vistas that were accessed by us, only because we were willing to do this road that was less traveled, that was a more difficult, hard road. But in doing the willingness to do that hard road, we gained access to amazing views, amazing views. And the beauty of this was the path was so often nice enough where I could not only walk the path, but have my head up and be able to appreciate the views while I walk the path. And that was that was so rare. Because other than really the first day, so often when we would face some of these incredible vistas, the only way to really take them in was to stop hiking, because the trail itself was so bumpy, rocky, and it was either loose rocks or big jutted rocks that would basically twist your ankle, and you had to be so careful that I had to be so careful that I had to keep my eyes down. And so it was either enjoy the view or protect your feet and in your body. So this was incredible from that standpoint of being able to enjoy the view while also hiking the path, and that also meant we could also have a meaningful talk. So when I said to her, "Hey, what do you want to talk about?" So she took me up on that, and she actually sat quietly. She was hiking quietly, and she said, "Just give me a minute. I want to ponder this for a moment." And so I said, "I'm just going to pray. I'm going to pray and see if a word comes up. I see if some word shows up." And so I prayed, and she was in quiet thinking. And the word that came up in my quiet prayer was the word healing. And so I shared that with her. I said, I don't know what this means, if this strikes you in any way, but the word that's kind of bubbling up in my spirit as I kind of went within and just said, Lord, what's a doorway that you have for this woman to walk through in this conversation? And so I said the word healing, and she said, that I don't know, that could fit. And so she said she if she wanted to sort of get my insight on the path that she had walked that had led her to end her marriage and be in a separated state and about to finalize a divorce. And so I said, that's fine. Well, let's talk about that. Well, this is where pornography comes in. And it surprised her. And she hadn't heard this before. But I've walked with enough married couples in my 35 years of church work and in the last, say, 10 years of doing married couples retreats and events and talking and praying with people for healing, that there are so many instances where the biggest pain and hurt that is happening in a marriage is traced back to the husband's use of pornography. And again, I'm not saying that women don't use it at time, and that's an issue too, and all that. I'm just saying to you, in my experience, that having conversations with couples, and whether it's a man or if it's with the wife in a ministry setting where I'm with someone else and we're praying, like Carrie and I are praying with a woman, this issue of pornography is devastating. It's tragic. It's horrific. So in this particular instance, she started to talk about the diminishment of intimacy in their married life, and how they were basically living as friends rather than as a couple. And um, she couldn't really put her finger on, like, how it really happened, how they just grew apart in terms of their the nearness they had in that relationship. And then she said something. She said, when things started to get worse, I discovered that he was texting women that were part of our friend group, and I wasn't involved in it. That he was playful and chatty and taking initiative to text, often on social media, um, like wives or women friends of theirs. And she wasn't included in it. And she had said in passing, he spends a lot of time on social media. That was one of the issues that intruded into their relationship. And when I heard both of those things, I said, "You do you realize that he is likely addicted to pornography?" She was shocked. She was like, "What are you talking about? That never never came out as a potential thing for me at all." And uh, it was really, really, like, sad that when she heard that. And I said to her, "Well, here's what I want to share with you. If you're aware of the fact that he's spending a lot of time on social media in the visible part of his life, you do realize that in the part of his life that is not visible to you, he's most likely spending more time on social media. And more importantly than that is, if he in his mind can rationalize his texting of women friends of yours in playful ways that doesn't include you, what do you think he's doing? And that's visible to you. What's he doing regarding his interaction with women online that's invisible to you? And thirdly, and most importantly, I said, you do realize that his uh, texting of these women and this playful sharing and engaging in these conversations is creating what's called an affective bond. There's a bond of connection that is affectionate, that is being created with these women because it involves self-disclosure. It involves a sense of gentleness, playfulness. It involves, I'm going to use the word, intimacy. So this affective bond is creating a type of intimacy between him and these women. I'll give you another word for that, I said to her, and that word is betrayal. He's betrayed you. He was actively betraying you, and he was doing that in visible ways. And one of the things, and St. Thomas Aquinas says this in the Summa Theologica, that the sin of lust has a number of negative impacts. And one of the negative impacts of lust is that it clouds reason. It clouds one's ability to make solid judgments about one's own behavior. And one of the very common effects of a man's use of pornography is that because he's willing to do that in secret, because he's willing to do that in a way that's hidden, his mind gets so clouded that he thinks that he can interact with women in ways that don't involve the uh, the the sinful impacts of engaging in pornography, um, especially self-abuse, masturbation, that's going to lead to, again, a sinful use of what is meant to be held in reserve for a loving act with his wife, is now being used in a way that is diminishing, is destroying, is undermining that very intimacy. And so uh, there's a way in which the idea that he's going to be having and developing this affective bond with these other women, in his mind, is, oh, it's totally fine. It's totally innocent. It's nothing like that stuff I'm doing in secret over there in a hidden way, which is also in his own mind probably something that he rationalizes, because one of the effects of sin, this is in St. John Paul II's document on penitence and reconciliation, is that when you sin, it diminishes the sense for God and the sense of God's voice and conscience, and it decreases the sense of sin. So the engaging of sin diminishes the sense that what you're committing is a sin, because it diminishes the voice of God, which is in conscience, giving you a sense of do this, avoid that. This is good and that's evil. Brings you to light and that leads you to darkness. And it diminishes that sense of God and that sense of God's presence in your life. And so, so those are the effects. Those are just some of the effects of pornography. And I said that, he's been betraying you. And I won't get into it in very explicit ways here in my sharing with you, but the damage and the terrible aspects of pornography that are connected to what's actually happening online. She didn't have any clue that pornography is not watching grainy videos or even high quality videos of X that are then available to be watched. No, it has to do with live interactive channels where a guy can engage in conversation, live conversation, and have interaction with the woman who will perform some form of sex act to herself or together with others, and he becomes involved in it. So it's no longer just an objectification of a woman; it's an interaction with a woman, and so there's a type again of relationship there that he's paying for, and that is leading him to engage in a sinful behavior himself. So doing that is just going to destroy and undermine this sense of free, open, clean, life-giving intimacy with his wife. So uh, she was like, again, really surprised that I never thought of that, never had a clue. May have mentioned once, was there any kind of issue, and he totally denied it. But all I can say is the signs that she shared with me, the most likely explanation is to trace it back to that as the source. So, guys, terrible. Please repent, get help, seek accountability. Do not settle for the devastating effects of pornography, and don't settle for being open to establish affective bonds through communication with women and wives. Same thing with men. Be careful about seeking a form of nearness, of mutuality in communication that's playful, that's gentle, that's self-disclosing, because it's going to create an affective bond that's a form of betrayal. That might be a hard word, but it's true. So there was the other aspect of this, though, and that was the word healing. And after she had shared that and we talked it through, and it really helped her, I said, let's talk about healing. And the thing that I think was so striking to her was that the Lord has power to heal. The Lord Jesus isn't just like observing her life, that God the Father isn't just someone who is like watching over the whole world and is somehow missing out on the specific care of the things she's going through, and in fact has healing purposes for her life. And so that's really part two of this reflection on her. So again, walking with this woman from Cacabelos to Vega de Valcarce, having seen these beautiful views that are there to be seen in this vista, there was a sense of saying, okay, does the Lord really desire healing for you? And if so, what does that look like? So I gave her two passages of scripture. I'm going to share them with you now for your own life, for your life to be able to have a sense of how do I access the Lord's healing power in my regard, with regards to my life. And this isn't just for those of you that are in a relationship marked by like a sin, like pornography, like I was talking about in this relationship. No, this has to do with the Lord's desire to heal you from anything that is keeping you back, that is holding you from going deeper into his life of his union with you, the union he has for you in your journey through this life. So the first passage was from John 11. And again, if you've walked with me through years of my program, you know that John 11 has been a very powerful and important passage in my own life of faith, all the way back to 1984. It's the raising of Lazarus from the dead, and cut to the chase. Jesus gets to the tomb. The stone is there. Roll away the stone. Lazarus, come forth. Lazarus, come out. Come from the dead back to life. Lazarus comes out, bound hand and foot by the burial cloth, by the cloths that were holding that traditional burial cloth on him. And then Jesus says in John 11:44, unbind him and let him go free. Unbind him and let him go free. Because even though Lazarus had been raised from the dead, he still was bound up. There was more freedom that God had for him, that Jesus had for him, that he actually needed in order to be able to be restored to actually functioning in life. And that was, he had to be unbound from this burial cloth. And so The challenge that he had was he couldn't free himself. He couldn't. He was literally bound up, and he had to allow others to untie him and let him go free. And so my message to this woman was, look, there are ways in your life that you're bound up. There are parts of your life that are bound up, and the Lord wants to unbind you and let you go free. And from what? From these wounds that have been part of your relationship with your husband? Yes. Are there other wounds from your childhood? Are there other wounds that are holding you back? And I said, I don't know. I said, that's something for you to pray with. But as your faith is becoming alive again on the Camino, I'm going to encourage you to put yourself in a place where you can peacefully and more passively allow the Lord to unbind you and let you go free. And so I'd shared with her the story of my time in the seminary back in 1984, where I would read the scripture, John 11, and focus on John 11:44. And I would just say to the Lord, Jesus, unbind me and let me go free. Jesus, unbind me and let me go free. Lord, I don't know exactly what needs to be unbound, but you do. So I just give you permission. Kind of like being on the operating table. I'm just going to be here in silence, in solitude, peacefully being still, and allow you to be the healing Lord and bring me on a healing journey of being unbound and set free. And I would pray quietly for about an hour a day over the course of almost that entire year in the seminary. And for instance, two incredible fruits that came from my praying that prayer, unbind me and let me go free. One was I went from a real deep need of control to one of trust, where I was able to trust the Lord more fully in my life. I was able to trust him and didn't have to control. And the second was the ability to receive the Lord's love and not have to earn God's love. And that was a big one for me because I had grown up in an environment where the love of God was something that would come to me when I was doing good things, when I was living a moral life, when I was performing. And so you've heard it said, I'm sure, that one of the challenges we have is just receiving this generous, faithful, merciful love of God who loves us because of who we are, not because of what we do. And so the idea of earning God's love is based on I'm loved and lovable when I do good things, when I'm doing God's will. But when I sin, I become hateful to God. And that's actually, frankly, a natural overflow of natural impact or consequence of sin. John Paul II, again, existential language here, says that doing something sinful is doing something hateful, and that there's an impact that sin has. And the impact that sin has is on our own lives as much as it's in the world. The deeper impact is inside ourselves, where we become hateful to ourselves. So that there's a dimension in our lives that when we sin, we become hateful to ourselves, and we begin to hate the fact that we're doing these sinful things. Romans chapter 7, St. Paul talks about this. And so there's a dimension of healing where we are being invited by the Lord to allow him to heal in us those parts where we are disgusted or we hate ourselves for the things we've done, and that he wants to unbind us and set us free to be able to receive this free, infinite, awesome love that he has for us simply because we're his. Because we're his. So that was my first word of prayer. And I encouraged her to go into a church, since she was Catholic, and go and sit in front of the Blessed Sacrament, because that's truly Jesus alive and present there, the living Lord, the glorified Lord, and just come and invite him to let his love wash over you, wash over you, wash over you, and to unbind you and let you go free. So that was the first word of healing. Oh, and um, uh, the second one, I'm going to bring up an impact of praying this way. So the second one was Luke 18:35-43. Luke 18:35-43 is the story of the blind man Bartimaeus, and Jesus is passing by. And I thought that was a particularly relevant passage in this instance because of the fact of how we met, the timing of the fact that we met. And if we had met, like if she had been like 3 seconds or 5 seconds earlier than when we actually came by, she would have been far enough ahead of me where I would not have caught her, because we were walking at pretty much the same pace, and she was maybe even walking a tad faster than me. So the idea that she would, that I would catch up to her was pretty much non-existent. So we came out again out of the hotel, and when we had just passed in that moment, if she was just like 10 feet ahead of me, 5 feet further ahead of me, I would not have said a word to her, because she would have been slowly pulling away from me. And I would have naturally fallen into all right, let me start with praying a rosary. And if she had been 5 or 10 seconds behind me, again, we're walking about the same pace. It would have taken her a bit of time, I don't know, maybe a quarter mile, half a mile to catch up to me. And by then, I would have been praying my rosary, and I would not have even thought of engaging with her in conversation, because now I've been launched into my time of prayer, and I'll meet up with somebody at the end. So the window of connecting with her was just a handful of seconds. That handful of seconds where she was passing by and I was passing by, and there was that moment and the connecting point in the conversation that led to this communication. And so I brought that up in relationship to Luke 18:35-43, where blind man Bartimaeus is on the road and Jesus is passing by. Jesus is passing by. And he's got this window, this tiny, tiny window, where he, hearing that Jesus of Nazareth is passing by, has a chance to shout out and get his attention. Again, if he found out too late, he's gone. He couldn't have shouted out earlier. It wouldn't have made sense. He wouldn't have known, and Jesus wouldn't have heard. But as he's passing by, in that brief window, Bartimaeus speaks out, "Lord, Son of David, have pity on me. Lord, Son of David, have pity on me." And there's even in that moment, the attempt to shut him down, right? The apostles shut him down, be quiet. And he shouts out even louder. Like the moment's passing. He's got to shout out louder, "Lord, Son of David, have pity on me." And what is he saying just through those words? Lord, he's referring to him as a position that is above, right? And that meaning of Lord can even have associations with like a divine quality to them, not just sir. But apart from that, Son of David is a title being given to the Messiah. The Messiah is the bringer of healing, wholeness, and salvation. The bringer of healing, wholeness, and salvation is the Son of David. So he's crying out and saying to Jesus, "I recognize you." He doesn't say Jesus, he says, "Son of David, I'm calling you the one who will bring healing, wholeness, and salvation into my life." And what does he say? Have pity on me. Have mercy on me. He's not saying, "I deserve your attention. I've earned some of your time." None of that. Have pity, have mercy. Please, I'm asking you to show me favor, even though I deserve the opposite. Even though I deserve the opposite. Because someone in his condition was commonly thought of as someone who is experiencing the punishment or the curse of some moral failure, some spiritual failure in his life. So, Jesus, Son of David, have pity on me. Quiet, shouts out louder, and then he gets brought to Jesus. And Jesus says the important question, and this is what I shared with this woman. I said, here's the question that Jesus is asking you. It's the question he asked the blind man Bartimaeus. What do you want me to do for you? What do you want me to do for you? And he says, I want to see. So I said to her, when you are taking this time to pray, I encourage you to imagine that this Camino is a moment, and going past these churches, going in and taking times of prayer, these moments where there's something special, there's a grace that that moment is offering to you, where the Lord is saying, what do you want me to do for you? You're turning to me as someone who will bring you healing, wholeness, and salvation. What do you want me to do for you? What do you want to see? And take the courage to bring to the Lord whatever it is you want to see in your life. And she was very moved by that. She was very moved by the idea that the Lord was taking an initiative, that there were these specially graced moments that the Lord was inviting her into, where she would just simply have to give God permission to bring healing, to unbind her and set her free, and wanted to say, look, take the risk of opening your heart and pouring your heart out and saying to me, what's your heart's desire? What do you really want to see in your life? I want to be for you the bringer of healing, wholeness, and salvation. And the one thing I said to her, and I shared this in an earlier reflection, it's worth repeating now. I said, when you make these kind of prayers, when you come before the Lord and you give him permission to heal you in this way, part of the existential experience that is often had by people who make these prayers is that you're not aware of what he's healing. You're not aware of, oh, it's that event in the past. It was that harsh word that was said to you. It was that thing that was done to you. It was that terrible thing that you did that has this lasting impact. You may not be aware, it may not come into your attention and your consciousness that this is what the Lord is healing. But you begin to experience these feelings that are like sometimes very intense and sometimes very negative. They'll start coming up in you. And the idea is that the Lord is, as he's setting you free from these negative impacts in your life, from these, again, memories and happenings, that on the way out, you'll have some experience of them as part of the healing process. Why that happens, I don't know. That it happens, I do know. And over the course of 40 years of praying with people like this, it happens. And so the key is, it happened in my own life. I'd have these intense feelings, and it was just let them go. Just give them over to the Lord. Let them pass through. Hand them over. Don't grab onto them and try to figure them out. Just let them go as they're like leaving your life. So they can be feelings of fear or anxiety or depression or anger or revenge or heart, whatever. Let them go. Let them go. Let them go. I give them to you, Lord. Heal me, Lord. Heal me, Lord. And I said, as a result of that, like Bartimaeus started following Jesus up the road. Your faith has been your salvation, and you'll follow the Lord more fully on the way, on your journey. And so that was the last thing we shared about before our paths parted, because she was stopping at a town and I was continuing on. And so she was in tears. She was very grateful. And just thank the Lord for the grace of that conversation that we had had. And so, another one of those, you were my angel today. God really sent you to me. And this is amazing, that kind of thing. So very grateful for that, right? Because again, being on the Camino, this is one of my real desires, is to be available and useful to the Lord and being able to minister to those whom he sends my way. So I bring all of this to you because I want this to be a blessing to you. If any of this struck you, I think it's so important for you to hear this, that the Lord has healing purposes for you. And maybe John 11:44 is going to be your passage. Maybe unbind me, Lord, and set me free. Let me go free is going to be a passage for you to come to a deeper level of healing. Maybe this is the moment, and there's a special grace right now, and I'm speaking to you. It's the Lord speaking to you through me and through how you're encountering this piece of media in this moment, is that the Lord wants to say to you, what do you want me to do for you? And take the risk and bring it to the one who is the bringer of healing and wholeness and salvation for your life, and watch what you will see happen. final word. After I went through all of that, or in the midst of doing all of that stuff on healing, I said, would there be any chance that hearing all of this, that the diminishment and ending of your married life is likely connected to pornography? That if you brought this to him and challenged him on it, and he had a conversion, a radical conversion, and he, in great prayers of penitence and repentance and cries to make up for it, would say, please, let's not let this relationship end. Let's pray that the Lord would restore it. I said, would that ever be a possibility for you? And she pondered it. She reflected on it, and she said no. And the word that came to my mind at that point was disqualified. There are things that we can do to each other that will break a relationship and in the end can disqualify one person from ever getting back into the relationship again. I'm not saying that there aren't people and circumstances and situations where there is restoration after, like, a sin of pornography. There's a whole book written on that, and ministries that have shown that that's the case. But in the way that this unfolded, in the story of all of the attempts that she had made to attempt to seek, to understand, to seek therapy, to seek a way of saving and keeping the marriage together, and his lack of engagement over the course of several years, and then to discover that if in fact this was the underlying cause, he was disqualified. And that is a great sadness. It's a tragedy. It's a terrible tragedy. And so something to be aware of. Again, I'm speaking to guys, but for anyone who's committing a relational sin like that, there are things that we can do to each other that you can't simply force restoration and full reconciliation on the other person. That person can have been hurt so deeply and extensively that you're disqualified. And it's not that person's fault that you're disqualified. It's your fault. So I pray for God's mercy on our lives, that we would never, ever commit a series of sins and a pattern of sin and create a relationship that is traced back to hidden sins that end up disqualifying us from, on this one journey in this one life that we have, from ever experiencing the full restoration that maybe only heaven will bring, and through a lot of purgatory as well. I'll also say this one final word, and that is that sometimes the only path for a person to experience the freedom to say, I will be open to restoration, is when that person knows they have the freedom to say, you're disqualified. When they have the freedom to say no in a way that for them is peacefully and virtuously definitive, that God just might sneak in through the back door and begin to nurture a path to reconciliation and restoration that only can come after there was the freedom to not have that happen. So that's just, again, another dynamic in our spiritual lives. All right, I hope and pray that these reflections were a blessing to you, and I'll talk to you about tomorrow.